Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Martin O'Neill. On February 16th, the Bloomington City Council heard a recommendation by the city's Sidewalk Commission. The resolution concerns 4 sidewalk projects for the upcoming year, all near the 3rd Street and midline of the city. The question before the Council Wednesday night was how all 4 projects would be funded. Councilmember Ron Smith gave a summary of the Sidewalk Committee's funds for the project and the difficulty that the committee has experienced in obtaining funds.
Each year, and it's probably been over the last 5 to 7 years, we're allocated about $336,000 to spend on building new sidewalks. And the money comes from alternative transportation funds, which are parking meters and some parking fees. It's not very much money to build new sidewalks. So we realize that, and we keep thinking there must be another way to get more money. And well, we keep thinking about it, and really we haven't been able to figure that out yet.
Bloomington resident Greg Alexander spoke during the public comment on the committee's report.
I just wanted to say briefly that this is a long list of sidewalks that aren't being funded, just like it is every year. We are not building sidewalks that are absolutely essential for impoverished members of our community, neighborhoods that have segregated transportation networks where people have to walk on Walnut Street. There are sidewalk gaps. On 2nd Street, there are sidewalk gaps. On Adams, sidewalk gaps. And it's a social justice issue, it's an environmental issue, it's a quality of life issue. It really needs to be taken care of, and this pathetic amount of funding simply isn't taking care of it. But I really do respect the work of the commissioners and the staff and everybody that worked on the hard job of deciding not to build 99% of the sidewalks we need. Thanks.
Also during public comment, Elm Heights resident Chuck Livingston said that he had taken several photographs of the sidewalks which remain inaccessible, such as those in local neighborhoods.
So last summer, I attended Councilmember Piedmont Smith constituent meeting that was also attended by Adam Wason. At that meeting, sidewalks were discussed. One of the members public who spoke said something of the sort that, well, perhaps in Elm Heights, the sidewalks aren't in good shape, but in McDowell Garden, the city has done a wonderful job with accessibility. So I walked over to McDowell Gardens to see what it looked like. Photograph 1 is one of the first things I saw, an absolutely inaccessible sidewalk. Photograph 2 is a sidewalk that goes to nowhere. Photograph 3 is I believe, a public works project from the 1930s that is completely decayed. Photograph 4 is a alley cut that's completely inaccessible. Photograph 5 is again a place that's absolutely inaccessible to anyone with disabilities. To the suggestion that things are getting better, photograph 6 is a relatively new handicap ramp in which a phone pole has been installed. Photograph 7 is a sidewalk. It's roughly between Don Griffin and Mayor Hamilton's house. See the new sidewalk. You see they didn't install a ramp to make that sidewalk accessible. Photograph 8 is about a block from Mr. Volan's house. The apartment complex put in a new handicap ramp. You can see its light. It goes straight into a mud puddle. Mr. Rollo just mentioned utilities can do work on sidewalks. This next photograph is from Lincoln Street. At the fire station, the handicap ramp floods. At Hunter Street, there's a stop sign blocking it. At the playground, it fills with mud constantly. At the police station, it floods as well.
Councilmember Dave Rollo responded to the comments, citing the prior freezing of the sidewalk budget by the Hamilton administration and the nationwide inflation as reasons for the scarce funding.
We have a meager budget, as has been described, and in fact, that budget has not been increasing. It was frozen this year. It was not increased by the administration. And I think a number of us were outspoken about it. This is at a time when inflation, of course, is making the potential for building sidewalks with the budget that we have. We get fewer and fewer linear feet of sidewalk. So clearly we need more funding, and there are possibilities, as I said, of the MPO funding. There's the possibility of an increased sidewalk budget, which I would hope that we would have in our coming budget this summer. But even if we doubled it, as the public had noted, Chuck Livingston noted, there is no possible way that we can attend to the projects that we have to do.
Rollo went on to propose strategies the council and administration could take to rectify these issues.
Given that, it seems, I think, that this council and the mayor should consider a bond for sidewalks. That would be one way in which we could get a lot of the projects attended to and completed in the near future. Another is to, besides a bond, I think that I'd like to address the misdirection of funds. I think that Mr. Ost alluded to that. That is, in my mind, at least, the Hawthorne Highland Greenway is a misdirection of funds. This is an unneeded expenditure of $300,000 to $400,000, which is equivalent to the sidewalk budget itself. And this greenway is already a greenway, and it already has a connection to Weatherstone. So we ought to be thinking about ways in which, as Mr. Livingston said, we direct funding where we're not getting the pedestrian infrastructure that we could have had we spent it on other projects. And so it represents an opportunity cost.
Councilmember Stephen Volan responded by defining the difference in the expenses involved in sidewalk repair and construction and proposed a return to a strategy previously instituted by the council that emphasized sidewalk construction.
It's important that we distinguish between what this money is supposed to be used for and the need, we could call it demand too, but the need for repair of sidewalks. That's an operating expense. But new sidewalks are a capital expense. And the money that we've, as a council, have intentionally reserved for many years has been to build new sidewalks. But we've never had the ability, we've always lamented the inability to use that money to repair sidewalks, many of which are worthy projects that Mr. Livingston presented. The first thing I want to say is I don't think that we need a standing committee just for sidewalks. I think it was a mistake to replace a transportation committee that could take up issues like scooters, parking, traffic control, public transit, and the like, with a committee this narrowly defined. The council, I don't think, needs to be deciding which specific projects are approved. The council does need to keep working on the excellent process designed by Mallory Rickbile, the previous Like and PED coordinator, which created a formula for prioritizing given projects, but that we left it to staff to decide. I mean, they have enough trouble picking and choosing from the paltry amount that we have managed to, as a council, to encumber for this purpose without any disrespect to Mr. Smith, who did an excellent job managing the past couple of years. It's sort of the overall process that I think is misguided. But that formula, if there's one thing that the council should be paying attention to, it's the formula that Ms. Rickbile created for prioritizing sidewalks. And that's something we can do in the normal course of considering an ordinance if we're not going to have a standing committee either on transportation or just plain sidewalks.
Volan concluded by supporting Rollo's proposal of a bond for the upcoming sidewalk projects.
So Mr. Rollo is correct. A bond for sidewalks is a good idea. But at the very least, it should treat sidewalk repair as a capital expense and not prioritize new construction. If we are serious about fixing sidewalks, then let's treat it as a capital expense. I'm hoping we're going to see a proposal for such a bond this year from the administration. It is overdue, and we've been talking about it as a council for more than the past couple of years. But I think it's important in this moment here where we're talking about the sidewalk committee that we at last give up this idea that somehow the committee is focused on the right priorities. I think we've missed the forest for the trees here. The committee is, as a council, we can revisit the formula for how staff can determine what sidewalks should be built new. But as a council, we also need to really rethink our entire approach to transportation.
The council approved the Sidewalk Committee's recommendation unanimously. And we'll have more from CATSweek after this.
Do you know that thousands of children go without school supplies every day? Teachers Warehouse is a 100% volunteer-powered organization. We service the educational and creative needs of students in Monroe, Brown, Greene, Lawrence, and Owen counties by distributing school supplies free to the teachers. Teachers Warehouse is composed of 7 rooms filled with books, pencils, paper, and even tools to motivate students. If it's in a classroom, we'll supply it. To donate new or gently used school supplies or volunteer, give us a call at 812-929-7522 or email us at contact@teacherswarehouse.net.
Welcome back to CATSweek. At the Monroe County Public Library Board of Trustees meeting on February 15th, Director of the library, Greer Carson, gave his monthly report.
We've added Comics Plus to our suite of digital resources. It provides unlimited access to thousands of digital graphic novels and manga titles for all ages. And this is relatively rare for these digital platforms, there is no borrowing limit. We have added Autumn Park Senior Community to the outreach van schedule. This is the new facility that's located just west of Ellettsville. CATS produced 14 new programs in January, and among the many events they covered last month was the celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday on the 16th, and the keynote speaker there was Georgia State Representative Park Cannon. And among the meaningful anecdotes shared each month from our numerous departments, we received a very gratifying compliment from the parent and one of our teen patrons, citing the many experiences, friendships, and overall sense of ownership that they've observed in our teen spaces. And this is a credit not only to our intentional programming and space management, but above all to our teen services staff. We are getting ready to begin our 2024-2026 strategic plan work, and will soon put together a strategic planning committee, which includes staff and is, as our tradition, at least one trustee. So we'll begin discussing that process at the March board meeting. We are also working on the annual report, which we submit to the state library by the end of this month. And as we do every year, once submitted, we'll share this with the board and with staff.
Next, Carson gave an update on the Southwest branch.
The big news for us is that the electrical switchgear finally arrived on February 8th, as we've been waiting for a few months. So this is great. This means we finally are set up with dedicated power at the site, and it helps with the temporary heating costs that we've incurred. And of course, it allows us to proceed with interior finishing as planned. So that was a big relief. We are installing electrical conduit for the garage and the surface level parking lot, so that somewhere down the road, if we choose to, we can install EV chargers, but we do not plan to install those as part of the construction project right now.
Carson asked the board to approve a change order to their contract with Strausser to include an art installation that he said would serve both functional and aesthetic purposes.
A while ago, we talked about commissioning an original artwork from a local or regional artist to fill up some of the spaces in the branch, both inside and out. And after having conversations with Bloomington and Indianapolis arts councils and representatives, people who do this kind of work, commissioning public artworks, we got a better sense for how much time it should take, and more importantly, how carefully we need to proceed if we're going to look at doing commission for local artwork. So that's not going to happen before the branch opens. What we're going to have is a large blank wall about 12 feet by 12 feet that hangs over the stairwell, which faces south, which has large glass windows looking out at Gordon Pike. So the concern is we don't want a blank wall, but maybe more importantly, there's going to be a serious amount of reverberation in that space. And so we started working with our architect on what could we do to mitigate some of that. And she came up with a really interesting product, and that is this felt panel product, which would hang at about 9.5, close to 10 feet by 10 feet on that space. The materials used are very effective in sound absorption. But they also have a wide array of colors we get to choose from, and they just so happen to have colors that match our interior design almost perfectly. The trick is that it's relatively expensive. This is $32,000 for the materials and the shipment, and then of course the installation, which we would want done by Strasser as part of our construction, rather than go to another party to do the installation. So while it's a little more expensive than we might normally want to see for a piece of art, this one has a functional as well as an aesthetic benefit, and that's why we're proposing it.
Board President Chris Harrison asked if sunlight could cause it to fade or degrade over time. Carson responded that he believed the felt paneling would be durable, but was not sure if it would fade.
That's a really good question. Well, first of all, the windows are facing south, but the piece would actually face west. So I don't know in terms of direct sunlight if we're going to see any real fading. The information that we have on the product is very, very durable. It's used in spaces like this quite frequently. So I don't have any indication that, okay, this is good for about 3 years and then suddenly the color starts to fade. But I can't say that that isn't going to happen either. There are a lot of windows there.
Carson added that they wanted to make the art installations interactive, and he said these two art installations would fit what they are looking for.
One thing that we started to think about when we realized we can't rush a public artwork to put something in that space is, well, maybe we want to focus more on a public artwork being a form of sculpture that's out on the patios overlooking the amphitheater, and even thinking about how successful the Bears have been out here on Kirkwood, something that's more interactive. And less about, well, let's commission artwork to go inside the building itself. And so these two pieces, the felt panels and very much the digital photography prints, would serve that purpose, yeah.
The board approved the change order unanimously. The next Monroe County Public Library Board of Trustees meeting will be held on March 22nd. During the February 14th meeting of the Monroe County Council, local resident Carol Wilson said during public comment that she wants to see improved conditions at the county jail.
Like all of you, and many others in the county, I've been following the proceedings of the Community Justice Response Committee. While I realize that county commissioners are ultimately responsible for any decision reached for the future, what I want to talk to you about tonight is the here and now, okay? Part of my comment at the CJRC February 6th meeting was quoted in the Herald Times, and it's exactly what I feel. Ensuring humane conditions should be the baseline for any further action. I wish, as you do, that we had a magic wand to transform our current facility. But since we don't have that, I hope you'll support the efforts of Sheriff Marte and his department to significantly improve the conditions in our jail. You've seen the presentation that they've made at a couple past meetings. I've even looked at it again. Some of you have even seen it in firsthand, okay? Progress is being made there, and I trust will continue under your stewardship. When I was thinking about exactly what I wanted to say tonight, an aphorism appeared on my Facebook feed. What you allow is what will continue. Facebook is usually not the source of great wisdom, but in this case I do agree, and I urge you not to allow these deplorable conditions to continue to exist. any way you can.
The Monroe County Council will meet again for its regular session on March 14th. And we'll have more from CATSweek after this break.
I'm at risk of thinking there's just no point in trying.
I'm at risk of looking in the mirror and hating what I see.
I'm at risk of being told not to tell.
But with Girls Inc. in my corner,
I will not be another statistic.
I will fight for myself.
With you in my corner, I will win.
Fuel her fire and she will change the world. Girls Inc.
Welcome back to CATSweek. At the Bloomington Board of Public Works meeting on February 14th, Senior Project Engineer Neil Copper asked the commissioners to approve a contract with J.R. Ellington Tree Experts for the West First Street tree removal project.
And the city received 4 bids. J.R. Ellington Tree Experts was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder at $10,800. To comply with the project's environmental requirements, the trees should be removed between November 15th and March 31st to reduce negative impacts to potential bat habitat. Pending contract approval, this tree removal work is expected to begin this month. There were a couple questions in the work session that I wanted to follow up on. There was a question about whether the trees are located generally in the tree plots. And first, I should clarify that this is actually tree removal for 2 separate infrastructure projects. So one is for our First Street reconstruction project, and the other is Phase 1 East related to the Legacy Hospital redevelopment. So it's the same area adjacent to First Street, but the north side of First Street, the block bounded by First, Rogers, Second, and Morton. There's tree removal within that block as well. So the trees in that block, of course, are not in a tree plot. They're in the middle of that block. The trees adjacent to First Street, some of them are in an actual tree plot. Some of them are, if the sidewalk is directly adjacent to the street, the trees are behind it. In some areas, there is no sidewalk. But generally, those trees are, adjacent-ish to the road as well. There was also a question about notification to adjacent owners. So the city is the adjacent owner for the majority of this area, the hospital site, for example. For the other properties, there was right-of-way acquisition involved. So during that process, there's a lot of communication with the owner. They see the plans. In most cases, the tree actually would have been acquired from that owner, and the city would have to pay for that tree. There was one adjacent owner where a tree is being removed where there was not right-of-way acquisition, and staff did directly reach out to that owner to make sure that they were aware. Staff supports the contract approval, and I would be happy to answer any other questions.
The board unanimously approved the contract. Engineering field specialist Jason Kerr shared a lane closure request from AEG for the citywide fiber project and a request from CenterPoint Energy for closures along South Rockport Road. Kerr said that the Counterpoint lane closure would conflict with the MCCSC school bus routes, but that CenterPoint will allow the buses to go through.
Again, they're looking for possibly 10 days, possibly sooner with the full closure there. There's been some questions yesterday from the work session. I do have some information on that. MCCSC will be able to reroute most of their buses. There are a couple that they cannot, just with stops within the area. A lot of the construction is within the sidewalk area and a lane of parking with equipment to do such work. And they will be allowed to open that to allow these buses through. I did allow them, or did give them the times to when to expect the buses as well. They said that would not be a problem. Another item brought up was they're contacting, there's one house that has a driveway directly involved with the project and the convenience store, of course. CenterPoint plans on talking to them directly with that. We'll also be putting this in our inroad system to notify people, as well as Hand is going to help us with this and put it out to the neighborhoods in that area as well through a mass email type of a situation. So that should help with that. Last thing that I did verify with them, that it will be open on the weekend and evenings and nights as well.
The board approved all of the lane and sidewalk closure requests unanimously. The next Board of Public Works meeting will be held on February 20th. On February 13th, at the Ellisville Town Council meeting, the council discussed designating an intersection at First and Ritter Streets as a four-way stop. Town Attorney Darla Brown introduced the ordinance.
At the last town council meeting, one of the town council members asked me the procedure to turn First and Ritter into an all-way stop, and that is what the purpose of this ordinance is. It removes First and Ritter streets from one section of the Ellettsville Town Code, which is a two-way stop, or it's the list of the two-way stops in the town, and this moves it over to the all-way stops.
Street Commissioner Kip Hetty commented on the intersection. He said that they have materials ready to bring drivers' attention to the new traffic pattern.
This intersection has been in question for a little while now. It's been a little slow to get at it, and Scott kind of helped it along. I wasn't at the last meeting, but I know he inquired about it. The intersection does deem, with the amount of accidents that's been there in the last few years, through the MUTCD, it does deem that to be an all-way stop. If this goes through on the second reading, I've already got the material hopefully on the way. We're going to put flashing beacons up since it's going to be a new intersection, and that way we would get everybody's attention for the new traffic pattern.
Councilmember Trevor Sager introduced a memorandum of understanding between the town of Ellettsville and the Ellettsville Department of Parks and Recreation and the Ellettsville Youth Sports League. Clerk Treasurer Sandra Hash said that they met with the Youth Sports League earlier that morning, and the MOU was not received until 6 p.m.
We met this afternoon with Martha and the new president, his name? Yes. And they presented this lined-out version, that red lined-out version. We went over it with them, made a few corrections, and she just sent me this at about 6 o'clock. So I made you copies. Darla, I know this is the first time you've seen it, and there are several changes.
The council decided to table their vote on the MOU until their next meeting to have more time to look it over. The next Ellettsville Town Council meeting will be held on February 27th. And that's all for CATSweek. For CATS and WFHB, I'm Martin O'Neill.